The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Murphy, and I'm your current APhA ASP National President. And tonight, we're going to present a webinar, our how-to guide for chapter reporting. And I've got some lovely presenters here today. They're going to detail some important information that you should keep in mind when going through the reporting process. But before we get started, some background information and just really webinar procedures. This is the two ways that you can dial into our webinar tonight. You can either use your telephone or the mic and speakers on your computer. The telephone works a little bit easier, and it's easier for you to listen. And also, if you raise your hand to ask a question, it's a little bit easier for everyone else on the webinar to hear. So I usually suggest dialing in on your webinar, and you just dial in that number, then enter in the access code, and then the pound symbol, and then the audio PIN number. If anyone has any questions about that at all throughout the webinar, feel free to ask the question. And in order to ask a question tonight, we have two different ways you can go through that. You can either type in your question on your GoToWebinar control panel, and you can type it in to the question area and then send that to our presenters tonight. Or you can raise your hand and we will call on you, unmute you, and then you can ask your question to the audience. So this is going to be pretty important tonight because, like I mentioned, we're going to be going over some of the reporting process, but we're going to have a lot of time this evening for you to be able to ask questions and get answers from our award standing committee. So now I'm going to turn things over and actually take a moment to talk about and recognize some of our great individuals that were on our award standing committee this past year. Our chair was Michelle Leatherwood. We had Nicole Clay, Elena Darby, and Christine Rarick. Tonight on our call, we have Michelle Leatherwood and Christine Rarick presenting, and we also have on call Crystal Atwell, who's the Director of Student and New Practitioner Development. And I also want to make sure to remind everyone on this call that if you're not presenting or asking a question, we do ask you to mute yourself just to make sure that we're keeping the volume down so everyone can hear the presentation. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Christine Rarick, who's going to start us off with our first poll question. Christine?
Good evening, everyone. As Michael said, my name is Christine Rarick. I am a final year student pharmacist at the University of New Mexico College of Pharmacy. So it's a little bit earlier over here. I still have some sunshine. And we are going to jump off tonight with our very first poll question. So if you can take a moment to answer on your screen what your level of report writing experience is, so we have a good, idea of everybody who's on the call and maybe how in-depth our questions are going to be tonight.
All right, thank you, Christine. And this is Crystal Atwell, part of the APhA Student Development Team, joining you this evening. So almost everyone has answered, so I'm going to give everybody just a couple of more seconds to type in their information, and then I will share the results. All right, so we have everybody's responses and the results. So it looks like most of the people joining us this evening are chapter officers, and the majority of them are going to be going through the reporting process for the first time. We have a good number of officers who've been a part of the process as well, and then a few advisors and people that are just interested in learning more about the reports. So back over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Crystal. First of all, I just want to say I am very excited to see so many new faces on our call. I think you guys will gain a really great benefit from being on our call tonight, whether you ask questions or you just participate passively. Maybe some other chapters are going to be asking questions that you didn't know you guys wanted the answer to. I also want to say a special thank you to our chapter advisors who are on the call. There may not be many of you, but I know you guys are super busy and it might be pretty late where you are. So thank you for spending your time with us to get your questions answered. We are going to go into a brief overview of tonight's webinar. Really the purpose is to just give you a very small overview of the purpose of the chapter achievement reports, what awards are available, the guidelines and resources that are available on pharmacist.com. We are going to discuss the big changes that are happening this year, which fortunately aren't too many. And then like Michael said, we're going to have tons of information to open it up for questions for you guys. That's really the purpose of tonight, is to answer as many questions as we can in the allotted time. So to jump in, I want to let you guys all know the purpose of the award reporting. It's more than just awards. It's more than just recognition at the annual meeting. The purpose of writing a chapter achievement report every year is twofold. First, we want the chapters to be able to know what they're doing. I know that every year your executive team is cycling over. I know that a lot of the times there's not a huge amount of carry through. And so by writing a chapter achievement report every year, chapters enable themselves to track their improvement. It encourages documentation of chapter initiatives and goals. Chapter achievement reports are also a great tool for leadership transitions by having this great compiled document of everything you've done over the last year. It really improves transitions, and it also helps develop writing skills. I know I've been through now 4 years of pharmacy school, and I've maybe written 8 pages over the entire time. And so it's nice to be part of an organization that is really encouraging us to develop skills in other areas outside of pharmaceutical practice. In terms of APhA ASP, I promise you that we go through every single one of these chapter achievement reports, and there's so many reasons for that. First of all, as an organization, APhA ASP likes to recognize chapter performance. We really love to see what everyone is doing and recognizing chapters that are going above and beyond. It's also great for us to see what every chapter is doing so we can identify areas of improvement and strength. Personally, reading these, there were about 127 this year. The best part of reading the chapter achievement reports was seeing the positive impact that student pharmacists have on the profession and the community. I was so proud of every single one of you when I went through these reports, seeing how much we have achieved as an academy. And last, by evaluating what everyone is participating in, it gives APhA ASP a better idea of what student programming should be offered on the national level. As a very, very, very important side note, in order to maintain your chapter status as an active member in the National APhA ASP organization, you must submit a chapter achievement report every year. So if I didn't give you enough good reasons at the beginning, please know that in order to be recognized by the national organization, you must submit a chapter achievement report. Going into the important part in some people's eyes, what can you get for writing these reports? If it wasn't enough on the last slide, we do use these reports for recognition at annual meeting and giving awards. There are multiple awards that are based off of the one essay, which is your chapter achievement report. The one big thing that you don't see on this slide, obviously, is the overall chapter of the year. That is not a divisional report. That is based on reading all of the chapter achievement reports and deciding the one school that deserves it. Outside of the chapter of the year, we have multiple other reports. Some of these are based on division. So you'll see that anyone who's in Division A, which is greater than 550 student pharmacists enrolled, those chapters are eligible to receive the Division A Chapter of the Year, first runner-up, and second runner-up. We do the same award for Division 2A and 3A as well. For specialty awards, these chapters, we go through every single section of the Chapter Achievement Report, and we decide who exemplified that section best. As you all might know, there are 4 sections to the Chapter Achievement Report. There is the Operational Leadership Award, the Patient Care Award, the Policy and Legislative Award, the Professionalism Award, and then we also award an up-and-coming Chapter Achievement Report to newer chapters and schools. So there are other awards that we didn't mention. These awards, however, require additional submissions. So these are things that you will not be recognized for unless you submit something outside of your Chapter Achievement Award report. These reports are the most improved chapter, the chapter innovative programming, and the outstanding IPSF activity. You'll see that IPSF is highlighted as being due as June 15th. We have moved up the deadline for reporting, however, so everything is due June 15th this year in terms of the chapter achievement report, the patient care report, and these optional reports. APhA ASP also loves to recognize individuals. So if there is an individual at your chapter, be it an advisor, your school dean, or another student pharmacist, we highly encourage you to nominate students for individual awards as well as those other parties that I mentioned. The first award that is offered for individuals is the Linwood F. Tice Friend of APhA ASP Award. This is an award that is awarded to a dean or a faculty member, someone in pharmacy that has made an impact on the national level. We also recognize an outstanding dean, the Outstanding Chapter Advisor Award. We recognize multiple students with the Student Leadership Award, and we also recognize one student with the Good Government Student Pharmacist of the Year Award. Like I mentioned, these are all awards that require nomination on the awardee's behalf. So be sure you check out the guidelines and think of a party that is deserving of any of these awards. With that, I will go ahead and pass it off to Michelle Leatherwood, the outgoing chair of the award standing committee. And she's going to give you guys a little bit more information on how to access those guidelines that I very briefly mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So my name again is Michelle Leatherwood, and I'm a fourth-year student as well. And I want to make sure with this webinar today that we're empowering you all. We're empowering you to have access to the information you need to be successful. And you've just gotten all of the whys from Christine, but now how do you do it? And so first, I'm just going to show you screen by screen. Right here is just pharmacist.com. You'll click on Get Involved. And then you'll click APhA ASP. And look, there's a whole section for it. APhA ASP Awards and Scholarships. And we've got the Chapter Achievement Reports program. So once you click on all of that, you're going to have access to so much information that will answer most of your questions. After the webinar in between now and June 15th, these are great resources to use, whether it's as a template, as a checklist, as guidance to how you're going to write, what style, what things should and shouldn't be included, as well as all of those optional reports that Christine just mentioned. So out of those three boxes, you can see just the overview and the general outline of the Chapter Achievement Report. But it's that box on the right that has all of the appendices that have separate documents for you that will help you. So I want to encourage you to click on several different things. Where it says at the top, the 2016-2017 reporting guidelines include, you can click on that. And that is our big guideline document with lots of good information as far as like how to submit something, which format to submit it in, what to call it. A lot of things are in that right there. And then you have, again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Just kidding. But what you can do, again, see you've got the template and guidelines. The Appendix B, you'll have specific guidelines for those essay sections. Appendix C is what we call the executive summary, and that is something that is an online submission. So if you've experienced that before, you probably know you're going to be typing in a lot of information, including numbers. So that's something that you'll want to have your information with you. So that way, when you're typing in all of the numbers, information, it's reflecting those numbers that you're also reporting within the rest of the report. So there's that. And then if you look at Appendix E, that is a separate video submission form. And then Appendix S, of course, is what you'll do at the very end, the confirmation form. After that, you've got all those optional reports that Christine mentioned. So go back to those and use them as references. And then my personal favorite is Appendix L because it's a checklist. Those of you who have participated in any feedback in the past, you'll notice that the checklist looks very similar to our checklist on our feedback form. So take a look at that, and that'll be an excellent resource for you. And then here's kind of the rest of them. If you scroll down the page, it'll show you who recently has received an award. It has all the different awards there and the chapters that got them. And then you can see under resources 2 important things. 1, our webinar, which you're on today. Good job. And then 2, the National Patient Care Project Award reports. So those you can get to with that link and get to all the different individual reports for each of the national initiatives that we have. And then lastly, you've got, of course, our contact information if for some reason you lose it. So lots of goodies in this section. So make sure you know how to get to them, your chapter members know how to get to them, and that when you're transitioning, you're showing your new leaders how to use this. And then one more thing about resources. So we are a resource. The Award Standing Committee, all of us are dedicated. We have spent all this time making sure to read your reports thoroughly and provide you good feedback. We are here for you. The way that our position is structured is the outgoing Award Standing Committee, so that's those of us on the call now, those of us listed on the website. We are your point people all the way until June 15th. You get to use us until the day you're submitting. So please contact us if you have any questions at all. And then, of course, that first link there is going to the chapter achievement report information where we were just looking. And then also there's a PDF of the communication style guide. This is a great way to make sure that you're reporting things consistently across the academy. So just take a look at that and make sure that you're following it. And then lastly, last year's how-to guide for chapter reporting was a very thorough explanation between all the different sections. And I think what would be great is to go use that YouTube link and watch that webinar because it's the same information as now. There's only a couple of big changes. So go back and look at that the 2016 chapter reporting video and then look to us for those changes. And I think you'll find that you'll benefit from using all of these resources together. All right, so now we have one more poll for you. What is the new deadline for both the chapter achievement reports and the patient care project report?
All right, thank you, Michelle. So that is on your screen right now. And your 4 options are June 1st, June 15th, July 1st, and July 15th. So go ahead and log in your responses. We've got almost everybody, so I'll give you just a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And so here are our results. So very good work, everybody. June 15th is the new reporting deadline for all of the chapter achievement related reports that Michelle and Christine highlighted earlier, as well as the national reports for our 5 national patient care projects. All right, so back over to you, Michelle.
All right, well, great. Means everybody's listening and understanding, so that's really exciting. Yes, so June 15th. So what, besides the big change of going from July to June, what else have we changed? That's the big question right now. So up on your screen, you'll see a summary of all of those. As Christine mentioned earlier, there really aren't that many, but they're important to pay attention to. So obviously the deadline, again, June 15th. And then the patient care essay section, specifically just the patient care essay section, not the leadership and operations, not the policy and advocacy, not the professionalism. That section you'll actually have now, instead of 1,500 words, you can go all the way up to 2,500 words. And I think you'll find a lot of benefit in that, especially since the Generation RX report, as you can see down there, its reporting cycle is around 1.5 years. So Generation RX, that individual report, that one you can report all the way from January 1st of 2016 to May 31st of 2017. And then that report will be due also June 15th. And this is to kind of catch us up, get us back on that cycle. So everything is due on June 15th. Same with that, the outstanding IPSF activity report. It is also, again, due June 15th. So I'm sure you can see the big summary here is what you all obviously know at this point. It's June 15th. Okay. So at this point, because we have given you access to all these different resources, we wanted to provide this time to you to ask us questions. This is meant for you to ask whatever, either small or big, general, whatever you've got, we are here for you. So as it says on the screen, you can either click that icon to raise your hand, or you can type a question.
All right, and we do have some questions that are coming in. And so, Michael, I'm actually going to ask you to answer this first one. Could you spend a little time explaining the difference between the patient care essay as part of the Chapter Achievement Award report and then the individual patient care award reports? So for Generation RX, Operation Diabetes, Operation Immunization, Operation Heart, and then OTC Medicine Safety.
Sure thing. So the patient care section of the Chapter Achievement Awards report is that one of 4 sections that make up that really long essay. And it's within that essay that you can speak about, in general, some of the great patient care activities you've done throughout your entire chapter. And they can be within any patient care project, or even if there's an innovative patient care project that you've created on your own chapter level. So it's really patient care in general happening on the chapter level. The National Patient Care Project reports are your Operation Heart, Operation Immunization, Operation Diabetes, OTC Medicine Safety, and Generation RX reports. And those are the reports that are 2,500 words each, due on June 15th, and they're the ones that, when you're writing that report, kind of makes sense. You're really only speaking to that specific National Patient Care Project. And it's through those reports that we then select the regional award winners, and they're awarded at our MRMs, and then our national award winners are awarded at our opening general session that is annually at our APhA annual meeting next year in Nashville. Does that make sense to everyone? If it's not clear, I'm happy to explain it a little bit more.
And just to cover some of the follow-up questions to that, the guidelines for the individual patient care reports, and these are the national initiatives recognized by APhA. So just to clarify for everyone again, that includes Generation RX, Operations, Immunization, Diabetes, Heart, and then OTC Medicine Safety. So those national patient care initiatives. Each of them has their own set of guidelines, and those will be available soon. We have extended the deadline, or we have extended the word count, not the deadline, we've extended the word count for Generation RX for the individual report as well in order to accommodate the extended cycle and all of the activities that we know each chapter has. So hopefully that clarifies your question. If not, feel free to type in and request a little more detail. So one of the questions that came in was why the change in the reporting cycle. If you can think back to MRM 2016, one of the things that we asked the chapter leaders and chapter delegates to give us feedback on the closing session on Sunday was actually changing the deadline. Some of the requests that came in to move it up or making things easier over the summer, also avoiding the overlap with Summer Leadership Institute. A number of you who will be attending are also the point people for writing the report. So that was one of the reasons why we initially wanted to ask. And then because an overwhelming majority of the chapters out there said, yes, please, to move it up to June 15th, we then made that decision. We know it's not perfect for everybody because every school is a little bit unique and different in the times of year when you start and stop your semesters or your quarters. But that was the majority ruling up from the chapters, so that's why we picked that date. So another question that came in, and Michelle and Christine, I'll turn this one over to you for your feedback and guidance. What are some of the most common mistakes that you've seen chapters make on their reports, and how can they avoid them?
So Michelle,
Sure.
if you don't mind, I can answer a few things, and then you can absolutely fill in anything I miss. I would say some of the biggest things I saw are actually very silly things. So you'd be surprised, but I say that the majority of schools had a lot of spelling and grammatical errors. I would say that those are things that not only decrease the professionalism of the report in general, it also distracts from the reading and grading process. My advice to correct those is just to have one point person who is in charge of reading your report, not necessarily for content, but for those spelling and grammatical errors prior to submission. This is a great way to involve your advisor, your new practitioner mentor if your chapter has one, or even a first-year student pharmacist who's kind of dabbling with the idea of getting more involved with the APhA ASP chapter. If you have that person read your report, not only do they see all the amazing things your school does, they're also a really good, fresh set of eyes that might catch some very minor errors that you didn't see because you're the person that wrote the report. Another thing that maybe isn't a big error but is important to note, the use of bolding and highlighting cannot go far enough in my opinion. Like I mentioned earlier, we read about 130 of these. Every member of the award standing committee reads every single one of them, and I will tell you it's clearly a lot. And so when your chapter utilizes bolding and underlining to really highlight the information that you find important within your chapter achievement report, not only does it make it stand out from kind of the word blur that we're starting to see towards the end of the reporting cycle or the end of our grading process, it also shows us what your chapter values and finds important. And that can aid a lot in the grading of the report by getting a sense of what you guys value. I don't know if Michelle, if you wanted to add in a couple of things to that.
Yes, so I definitely agree with you, Christine, on several of those things, especially the proofreading. I think there are a lot of strategies for that, and Christine just gave you a great one. But anything you can do to have people involved to make sure that there aren't basic mistakes in there. Along with just spelling and grammar errors, even having like track changes, whether that's using the actual track change feature or typing little notes within the essay, just going back and making sure those were all taken out. Along those same lines, I would encourage chapters to actually take a step back and really do read all of those resources, because to me, one of the most common mistakes is just not following the basic instructions. So not submitting all of the pieces that are required, not filling them out appropriately, following the format. And then if you do want to go a little bit deeper, then looking at what we're actually asking for those essay sections. You can see within the guidelines, I think Appendix B, that the leadership and operations, patient care, policy and advocacy, professionalism, they're well described in the guidelines as to what types of information we are asking for. So go back to check, and when you're finished writing, kind of take a step back, read that section of the guidelines again and say, am I answering this question? Additionally, if you look at the patient care, policy and advocacy, and professionalism sections, you'll find a trend. We want to see major themes. So impact, involvement, innovation, and collaboration. So making sure that you're actually articulating that instead of just describing what you did that year with patient care. So again, most common mistake, just answering the question and filling out the required pieces.
All right, and one point of clarification that I'm going to make based on a statement I said earlier. So the guidelines have been updated and are now on the website for the Chapter Achievement Award report. So in the section that Michelle and Christine showed you earlier, that is available right now. The patient care guidelines that will be updated for this new deadline will be up very soon. So stay tuned for those, but they will be available very soon. And then if you have very specific questions about your report, you can see on the screen right now the contact information for the members of our award standing committee. I would just ask on their behalf that you maybe have a little bit of patience as you're reaching out to them right now. A number of the individuals on the committee are in their final year of pharmacy school, so they're in the heat of prepping for NAPLEX exams as well as graduation. So we will be there to answer your questions. It just may take us a day or two to get back to you with that information. Okay, so I think this was in, Christine, your section, but could you talk a little bit about the sections of the award, the chapter achievement report that are required versus the sections that are the optional portion?
Thank you, Crystal. Absolutely, I can address that. So to start off with, the chapter achievement report itself is one single document, and that is the one thing that is required. Within that single essay, there are 4 sections. So the 4 sections are chapter leadership and operation. The guidelines have a very clear description of what is included in this section, but briefly, it's a discussion of your leadership structure, your membership recruitment strategies, any fundraising that the chapter participated in, member engagement, collaboration, those types of things. It's really the meat and bones of what your chapter is and how it runs. The next section within that required chapter achievement award report is patient care. This is a, if you can do it in 1,500, this year 2,500, but a 2,500 word snapshot of what your chapter achieved throughout its patient care projects. Those patient care projects being the nationally recognized patient care projects, including Operation Heart, Operation Diabetes, Operation Immunization, Generation RX, and OTC Medicine Safety, as well as any individual chapter patient care projects you participate in. I know at the University of New Mexico we are still doing Operation Over-the-Counter Medicine because it's something that's very, Operation Self-Care, because it's still something that we very much appreciate. It's very strong within our chapter. And just because it's not nationally recognized anymore as a patient care project doesn't mean it cannot be included in your patient care section. We love to see when chapters are doing things outside of the national guidelines because it's creative and innovative. The next section within that Chapter Achievement Award report is the Policy and Advocacy section. This is a section where you describe essentially just that, anything your chapter did to promote policy related to pharmacy, advocate for our profession, things of that nature. And the final section is professionalism. This section really focuses on anything your chapter participated in, whether it ran an event or collaborated with another organization in terms of professional development, such as CV reviews, mixers, mentorship programs, public speaking, that type of thing, any sort of community service. IPSF involvement is also incorporated in this section rather than the patient care section, just as a side note. Anything like that gets tied in with the professionalism section. So those 4 sections make up the meat of the required report, which is your Chapter Achievement Award report. Outside of that report, there are optional essays that your chapter can submit. By submitting those reports, you give us a better idea of what your chapter is doing in specific sections, and you also increase the odds of being recognized at the national meeting, the annual meeting, because you're giving us more information on what your chapter does. So those optional reports are the most improved chapter, the innovative programming, and outstanding IPSF activity. For outstanding IPSF activity, it's very similar to what you would submit for a patient care report, but this one is capped at 1,500 words, just so you know. But really describing what your IPSF chapter does and what makes it different from other schools. For innovative programming, if there's anything your chapter does that you think, hey, this is really cool, I've never seen another school do it, but I think that APhA ASP as a national organization should be talking about this, should be taking this initiative on. Please submit a very quick 1,500-word write-up about what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you make it work. In terms of other optional reports, there are the individual reports. Again, everything is detailed on pharmacist.com under the reporting guidelines that Michelle talked about how to access, so you don't have to memorize all of this. But there are multiple individual awards, and these are awards that you can nominate other people for. So if you have a great dean, a great advisor, a great student leader within your chapter, I encourage you to check out those guidelines and submit an optional report on their behalf.
All right, and Christine, you touched on some of this, so I'm going to ask Michelle to take the first pass at this question. What do the individual chapters that are successful in receiving an award, what are some of the things that maybe that they do that make their report stand out, or the events that make their report stand out?
Okay, so this is Michelle, and I think that there are a lot of things that can make a chapter stand out with all of these reports. One is, again, for me, just going back to the basics and making sure you're submitting what you're supposed to be submitting. So referring to those guidelines, following those instructions. However, I think what sets chapters apart is when they're able to talk about the overall growth, the overall improvement that their chapter is having, and what it is that's causing that and how they're measuring it. So, for example, if a chapter has increased their membership, actually discussing how did they do that and what was the impact of that, and that increased membership, what did that do to help the chapter grow? So that's just one example, but there are many ways that you can articulate a specific event. And I guess what I'm trying to say with a specific event is use that specific event to supplement, to prove, to explain the concept you're trying to get across. So if you're trying to show that your chapter was really innovative with a policy and advocacy initiative, use that example that your chapter did to showcase it. And I think some of the successful chapter reports really do a good job of articulating those specific points. Does that help, Crystal?
Yeah, I think so. So, Christine, I'm going to send this one to you. Could you go over the purpose of the chronological list, how the award standing committee uses it, and any tips that you might have for pulling that information together and things that the award committee looks at as part of the chronological list?
Great question. So I'm sure people who are on the call that have participated in writing a Chapter Achievement Award report in the past can attest to is that 1,500 words just isn't enough sometimes. We have a lot of schools that push it to 1,498 words, every single section, and that's wonderful. But we also recognize that you guys do so much and you host so many events that not everything can be incorporated within the essay. And that really is the purpose of the chronological list, is we want to see absolutely everything that your chapter has participated in the last year. The award standing committee absolutely takes your chronological list into account when we are reading reports and we are grading and we are assigning points. We look at all of the events that are included in the chronological list. So really what its main purpose is to report everything that your school has done. In the name, it kind of gives it away that it is a chronological list. It's, you can see that the format is available on pharmacist.com. So really the biggest things that are included are the name of the event, the number of patients that were served, if it's a patient care event, the number of student pharmacists that participated, and a brief description of the event, among other things. It's really just enough information to give us as an award standing committee an idea of what the event looked like in a snapshot so that we have a better idea of what your chapter participated in, even if it wasn't included in the body of your chapter achievement award report.
All right, thank you. And so, Michelle, next question over to you. Could you talk a little bit about the optional supplemental materials that chapters can submit, what kind of materials are most effective for the awards standing committee to look at, maybe some suggestions along how to use that piece of the submission process effectively?
Sure. So I think when you're looking at the optional supplemental material, so not talking about those optional reports, but looking at materials, photographs, videos, that sort of thing, those are really effective when they add value to your report, when they help describe, help show that impact, that innovation, involvement. When it shows that through a picture, through a video, that's very helpful. So for example, with a patient care initiative, if you've developed a really great material that you've been using and handing out to patients, or whether that's like a brochure or a presentation, anything that you all have worked very hard to creatively compile, then submit that and use that to help show how creative you were. So when you're referring to it in the report, we have something to look at that supports it. I mean, there's the supporting part. I think also a really important supporting supplemental material that a lot of chapters would benefit from using is leadership structure. So again, those of you who have written before have probably seen that leadership and operations essay section can fill up really fast, especially if you're spending all these words trying to describe your structure. Well, instead of putting it in words, you can do something like put it in a diagram, something that's like a hierarchy, any way that helps us see how you all work with each other. And that can be helpful for describing where committees fall, how the chapter is related to others, especially in umbrella organizations, and even with different campuses. You can use a picture, a diagram, some supplemental materials to explain that concept instead of all these words. Let's see. I think those are two big examples that I have. Would you have anything to add?
I think you hit on the biggest one. I would mention that just as someone who went through all the reports, I genuinely appreciated seeing pictures and videos. It really kind of lightens up the process, and it gives us a better idea of what events look like. Like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and Michelle mentioned that word count gets really tight. So by referencing an event and then including an attachment that is a photo of that event, it gives the award standing committee a better idea of what that event physically looked like.
And then I'll also share that APHA staff uses your videos and your photos throughout the year for Student Pharmacist Magazine, for social media promotion, for different types of recognition throughout the year and promotion of your chapter. So we very much, while that's an optional portion in what you submit and how much, it is something that we definitely also look at. So one of the things that I just want to quickly clarify for everyone before we get to our last few questions is the submission process. So this year, as in previous years, you will be using your APHA ASP national from headquarters issued Dropbox folder. So this is something that your outgoing officers, your chapter advisor should already have access to, and hopefully as a part of your transitions process, you have passed off that information for who can access that Dropbox folder. Now your chapter may have your own internal folder that you use for document sharing, for uploading photos or anything that's chapter operations, but in 2012 there was a folder specifically issued to your chapter from APHA, and all we use it for is the transfer of your report. So if you're not sure if you have access to that or if you have access to the right Dropbox folder, first place to go is to talk to your outgoing officers and your current chapter advisor. If it seems like nobody knows the answer or you're confused, if you've got multiple accounts and you're just not sure, then feel free to send us an email and we can always make sure that the invitation gets in the right spot. But we do very much look to you as the chapter leaders to pass off this information as part of your transitions material. So winding down to our last couple of questions, they're very similar and related, so I'll kind of structure them together. And that's related to the formatting, the specific formatting of the essays. We referenced earlier the bolding and the underlining, and then there are a couple of questions in here with specifics to the style of the text and how all of that needs to go. So Christine, could you maybe touch upon that?
I would love to. So my first place to refer you would be the guidelines that are posted on pharmacist.com. They will give you a good idea of what your sections should look like, what should be included, and obviously the word count, but for brevity's sake, I'll go ahead and describe it to you guys. First of all, each section that I described earlier is capped at 1,500 words, with the exception of patient care this year. Within these sections, I strongly encourage you to use the same voice and the same formatting. So I know a lot of chapters delegate the sections out to be written by different people, and that's totally fine, whatever works best for your school. But when you're compiling it all as one essay, prior to submission, I encourage you to have one or two people look over each section and make sure that the flow is consistent throughout the entire report, because it may be written as 4 different sections, but the award standing committee is going to be grading it as a single whole document. When I mentioned bolding and underlining earlier, it is absolutely not required, but again, the purpose of utilizing either bolding or underlining is to highlight important information within your chapter achievement report. Whether that is the number of patients served at a specific event, changes you made to your leadership structure, a new innovative initiative that you're really excited about, whatever your chapter deems within that essay as something that you want us to pay special attention to, please delegate it as such with bolding or underlining so the award standing committee knows that this is something that you want us to really look at and evaluate. There's really no set what font it should be, if it should be Arial versus Times New Roman. Like I said, consistency is key here, so as long as you're using a widely accepted font and size, I encourage double spacing, those types of little things, and all of this information, again, can be found in the formatting guidelines on pharmacist.com.
Thank you, Christine. And I think just to reiterate, all of the tools and resources I think are probably there for you on the section of the website that Michelle demonstrated earlier. It may take you a little bit of time to get familiar with them, but They are there for you. We've tried to make them as clear as possible. But if at any time you have questions, as you can see there, you've got your liaison. Also, you can send questions to the APhA ASP inbox as well, and we'll be sure to respond to you and get you the answer to your question. So one last question that came in before I turn things over to Michael to close us out is, does the award standing committee review the patient care report? And in fact, they do not. So the awards that Christine talked about at the beginning of the webinar, the chapter of the year, the divisional awards, and some of the specialty awards, all of those are selected based on your chapter achievement report, which is required for you to maintain your charter. Those awards, as well as the individual awards, so the dean, the TICE, advisor, your student leadership award recipients, et cetera, those are selected by the award standing committee. So the individuals that you see there on the screen, they selected the awards that we announced this past March in San Francisco. Each of the 5 national patient care projects have separate committees that review them, and they're comprised of student pharmacists and practitioners who work very closely within those areas. So they're very knowledgeable both about the community needs as well as what the chapter activities have been in programming around those events. So I think that while it's it can be a little bit confusing about repeating things in certain places, that part of the reason we want you to do it is because it could be a whole different committee that's reviewing one report. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for your participation this evening. Again, if you have any questions that you think of after tonight, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And with that, I will turn it over to President Michael Murphy to close us out.
Thanks, Crystal. So for me, the 2 big things that I'm taking away from this evening is that the new reporting deadline is June 15th, and there are so many resources on pharmacist.com for you to really be able to find the answers to your questions. And if you do still have any questions at all after you've looked through the appendices, after you've watched last year's webinar that goes really in depth into all of these, all of this information, if you do have any additional questions, like Crystal said, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the award standing committee, me as the NEC liaison, or the APhA ASP email accounts. But with that, I really want to thank you for your participation, for being here to learn a little bit more about the chapter reporting process. And I also want to take this time to thank all the members of the award standing committee. This is so much work throughout the year, and everyone did such a great job and really made a difference in the academy. But with that, thank you all so much, and I hope that you have a great night. Bye, everyone.